I'm Thomas the Hermit, and I am a lay hermit, a man of prayer, and this is my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, I talk a lot about contemplative prayer and prayer in general, and I also talk about other things that concern me in the Catholic Church, and I also kind of chronicle my life as a hermit, which started about 2 years ago. Now, the book that I've shown you at the beginning here is the source of my topic, and we're going to be discussing that. The title is The Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, and the Betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church by Malachi Martin. Okay? Now, who is Malachi Martin? Malachi Martin was a Jesuit. Now, if you don't know what the order of the Jesuit is, let me describe that just for a minute. The Jesuits were the elite religious order of the Catholic Church who professed obedience directly to the Pope. They were set up so that they could serve whatever the Pope felt needed to be done. If you were to compare them, let's say they're like the special forces of the Catholic Church when it comes to spiritual matters. And the Jesuits have been the most powerful, influential force within the Catholic Church and throughout the world, more than any other group in the Catholic Church. One of the reasons for that is because of the training that Saint Ignatius, he was the founder. Saint Ignatius Loyola was the founder of the Jesuits, and he was a soldier at one time, and he developed some spiritual exercises around his knowledge of high contemplation, but also his experience as a soldier. So he actually created a spiritual army within the church that was sworn obedience to the Pope. Now, Ignatius of Loyola is really, probably very concerned in heaven right now because of what the religious order that he founded is doing and what they have done. And this was chronicled by Malachi Martin. Now, Malachi Martin became kind of a controversial figure because, well, he asked John Paul II to remove the vow of obedience and the vow of poverty from him, and he left the religious order. He left the Jesuit order. That's not what made him controversial. I think what made him controversial, now, number one, the church then, didn't have the power to quiet him when he began sharing the things that he wanted to share. And he wanted to tell the story about what was going on in the Jesuits so that everyone knew. John Paul II knew. In fact, John Paul II, Paul VI, John the 23rd all had run-ins with the leadership of the Jesuits during their pontificate. And that is one of the things that is covered in Malachi Martin's book. This is something I did not know. He also ties in Vatican II, what he calls the spirit of Vatican II, where he says that the spirit of Vatican II went overboard. And it went way beyond the intention of Vatican II, and it created this effect of these religious wanting to become social workers and even guerrilla fighters down in the jungles of South and Central America to liberate the people. Now, before we get going on that, we need to understand how that is converse against Orthodox Catholicism. And this is what Pope John Paul II was fighting the Jesuits about, and it is chronicled within Malachi Martin's book. Now, Malachi Martin also kind of got he kind of got a reputation because he went on a show, a radio show, and that's how a lot of us came to know who Malachi Martin was. Malachi Martin was interviewed by Art Bell. Art Bell put together a radio show where he talked about all sorts of different supernatural phenomena, you know, and he had Malachi Martin on several times. Now, one of the reasons that he had him on is because Malachi Martin published a book called Hostage to the Devil. Because on top of all of his credentials, being a Jesuit, being a PhD, an anthropologist, being head of the Pontifical Biblical conference up there in the Vatican. I'm not really saying that right, but he was the head guy of Bible studies up there at the Vatican, and he had all of these things. He was a very important, and not only that, he was an advisor to the 3 popes that I mentioned, and he was also an advisor during Vatican II. He has the inside of everything that was going on with the Pope, the bishops, the Jesuits, Vatican II, and he has put it in this book. Now, Malachi Martin is no longer with us, you know, and he has published many, many books, and his books are very, very important for us to understand what is happening to our beloved Catholic Church. And those that want to malign Malachi Martin, and those who want to say all sorts of bad things or negative things or critical things or you're not with the church and all this other stuff, I say poo-poo to that, because he was a Jesuit priest, highly educated. He was in the middle. He was an advisor to 3 popes. He was an exorcist, and he is a prolific author, because that's what Jesuits did. They always maxed out everything that they did, and Malachi Martin was no different from any other Jesuit. Now, when he speaks, you hear a humble man. You don't hear the kind of man that I'm describing. But Malachi Martin, that's a sign that he was a true spiritual man. And I applaud his courage to step outside of the Jesuits and be able to report to the rest of the world what exactly happened in Vatican II, what happened in the Jesuits, and what happened. Oh, and by the way, I'm not against Vatican II, but I can see that the spirit of Vatican II has certainly kind of driven us down a bad road, which Pope John Paul II was trying to drag us out of, but he was fighting the Jesuits the whole way. Now, I'm going to do more about this book because I'm going to get more into the details of what happened and what Malachi Martin says in subsequent videos. And I invite you to subscribe and to be a part of my viewership and to pick up more of the knowledge that I've been acquiring in my 35 years as a contemplative and lately as a hermit. This is Thomas the Hermit. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you, and I'll talk to you later.